without further ado, the Rhinebeck Historical Society this evening is delighted to be able to present the Starr Institute's history. And our presenter is Duane Ragucci, and as I said a moment ago, accompanied by Beverly Kane. And Beverly has been involved not only with the Rhinebeck Historical Society, but as a trustee of the library, involved with the Museum of Rhinebeck History for a good number of years, and descended from somebody who at one point was the mayor of the village of Rhinebeck. And the Duane, who you will be seeing first, is a retired administrator, ran one of the elementary schools in the Arlington School District for a good number of years. And before she moved to Rhinebeck, very wise move, Duane, she lived in New Paltz with her husband, Al, who by coincidence is the head of the board of the Starr Library, not to be confused with the Starr Institute, but I do understand they may have a connection with each other. Who's that guy behind you, Duane?
I don't know. He follows me around.
I don't know.
Hey, George.
So without any further ado, I'm delighted to introduce Duane Ragucci this evening.
Okay, now if the technology gods are in my midst, we'll get this going okay. Okay, I think we're all set. Mike did not mention that on the top right of your screen, if you don't want to see everybody's face, you can hit the minus bar and that will get rid of everybody. Or you can just leave everybody visible for you to see. So right now, only because I want to see the whole screen, I am going to hopefully.
Yeah, if you hit the minus button on top of those cameos, it will reduce those videos.
So thank you for coming and listening tonight. Beverly and I met several times over the past several months, or actually we emailed and talked on the phone and occasionally got to meet at the library to talk about this presentation. Beverly's a wealth of information and a wonderful researcher. So I relied on her and a lot of the things she had available to put this together. But anybody who is a resident of Rhinebeck or a visitor to Rhinebeck is very familiar with the beautiful white building located at 6417 Montgomery Street, known as the Starr Institute. In this presentation, I want to share the history of the building and the importance it has played in the Rhinebeck community. Now, as with any historical presentation, it's important to know the people who played a part. So to begin with, we're going to look at a cast of characters, those who made it all possible. Our first person is Major General Philip Schuyler. General Schuyler was born in Albany, and in 1775, he was elected to the Continental Congress, and he served until he was appointed a Major General in the Continental Army. And he served in the New York Senate for most of the 1780s. And in 1755, he married Catherine Van Rensselaer. They had 15 children. 8 survived to adulthood. And if any of you visit Albany, when we're allowed to go visiting once this pandemic is over, you could visit Schuyler's mansion, which is in Albany. This is his wife, Catherine. She was a Livingston descendant. Her great-grandfather, Kilian Van Rensselaer, was one of the original founders of New Amsterdam. And she is described in things that we read as a lady of great beauty, shape, and gentility. Our next character is Philip J. Schuyler. Philip was one of Major General Philip Schuyler and Catherine's sons. Philip J. Schuyler was a member of the New York State Assembly and later the U.S. Congress. He was a man of great wealth. Philip married Sarah Rutson in 1788. Now, Rutson is a familiar name to this area because her family actually came from this area. And after marriage, Philip took over a grist mill and sawmill operation that was already existing on the land owned by Sarah's grandfather. Philip and Sarah were also given 21 acres of property on that same property as a wedding gift. And what they did with that property is they built a manor house, and it was completed in 1795. And this house was called the Grove. Now, this is Cornelia Schuyler Morton. She was the daughter of Major General Philip Schuyler and Catherine, and she was obviously Philip's sister. In 1797, she married George Washington Morton, and they had 5 children. Their youngest child was Mary Regina Morton. Mary Regina Morton Starr Miller, very long name. She was the daughter of the granddaughter of General Schuyler and Catherine, the daughter of Cornelia Schuyler Morton, and the niece of Philip Schuyler. Now, this is important because Mary's parents died before her 5th birthday, and she was adopted by her mother's brother, Philip Schuyler, and spent her childhood at the Grove. She received the best education possible, and when Mary was 22 in 1829, she married John Sturgis. They divorced in 1840. In 1841, she became the wife of Honorable William Starr Miller. She became a widow in 1854 when William died. She was only 48 years old. They had no children, but she did have his huge fortune. William Starr Miller married William Starr in 1841, and he was a wealthy merchant, wealthier than the Schuyler family. From 1845 to 1847, William was a United States Congressman from New York. And this picture of William Starr Miller can be viewed today at the Starr Library. This is another picture of Mary, obviously later. And after her husband's death in 1854, Mary returned permanently to her childhood home in Rhinebeck and purchased the Grove, which was her Uncle Philip's home and the one that she spent much of her early years in. She made changes to the house, adding a 3rd floor and installing a rear service wing. Mary Starr Miller cared deeply about the people in the community and in the area of Rhinebeck. Every church in the area benefited from her generosity. She was a principal supporter of the Church of Messiah, and she was instrumental in the building of a rectory and chapel that adjoined the church. Many hospitals and institutions in the area were recipients of her generosity. Now, this is a picture of the Grove as it looked when her Uncle Philip lived there. And Beverly and I don't really know for sure if that's her standing there, but I'd like to think so. I have a feeling it kind of looks like her, and she's standing in front of the house that she recently purchased prior to her renovations. The Grove can be seen today on Miller Road, east of the village. And that's what it looks like today. After Mary's death in 1881, the Grove passed to her nephew, Dr. George Miller. When Dr. Miller died in 1935, the property was given to his children, and in 1961, it was donated to Bard College. It was used as a dormitory and a daycare center. Bard sold the property in about 1983, and it was converted into 14 apartments, and it remains apartments today. It's a beautiful piece of property. You can drive there and see some remnants of where the stream ran that probably was used for part of the mill operation. July 1857, in a quiet manner, an experiment began in Rhinebeck. Now, this was 3 years after William Starr Miller's death and Mary Starr Morton's return to Rhinebeck. And that experiment, it was a plan to have a free reading room and circulating library introduced to the village of Rhinebeck to test whether a want existed of access to books at a moderate cost. 2 rooms were rented in the village and fitted up in a small building on the opposite side of the street from where the Starr Institute is today to test the experiment. The experiment lasted 4 years and proved to be a success in who frequented the reading room and who drew books from the circulating library. They wanted to make it permanent. Now, Mary Starr Miller, being the type of person she was, spent, and other local women, I should say, donated over 600 books to set up the library. And there were also 150 pamphlets and over 300 magazines donated for the reading room. So Mary realized that in making it permanent, they needed a home. So she purchased 2 pieces of land on the west side of Montgomery Street and for $15,000 contracted to have the building constructed to make the experiment permanent. So in 1860, the Starr Institute was founded. And that's a very early picture of the Starr Institute. I can't say for sure if it was there, if it's the first picture that was ever taken, but it's certainly an early picture. It's just a magnificent building. It was a large building. It had a lot of room. And I think the town and village were very lucky to have somebody like Mary to provide that for them. So what's in the name? Why the Starr Institute? Well, Mary honored her husband by naming the building after him. There was a tribute to Mary in 1874, and this was part of that tribute. The Starr Institute received its name in commemoration of William Starr Miller, to whose excellence of character, benevolence, and public and private virtues, its founder, Mary Starr Miller, desired to pay this lasting tribute of affection and respect. So on April 18th in 1862, New York State, they incorporated the Starr Institute and named the first trustees. And that list on the left here are all the beginning, is the list of the beginning trustees that were responsible for the Institute. And as you can see, there are all men except for Mary at the very bottom. She was only put at the bottom because that's where I typed her. So she wasn't at the bottom of the list, but, and I'm sure you can recognize many names on that list or the family names because many are in the area today. So the first meeting of the trustees was held July 24th in 1862. And at that meeting, as you can see in the quotes, a deed of conveyance of real estate together with the deed of gift of the personal property contained in the building was presented to the board by Theophilus Gillander for and in behalf of Miss Mary R. Miller. So she built the building, she gave them books, and then she gave the building to the community. And this plaque is, if you've been in the Starr building at any time prior to being closed, could be seen. We're not sure which side of the entryway it was on, but it was there, and hopefully it's still there since it's been vacated. So let's talk about the building itself. When the Starr Institute opened, it obviously had 2 stories. And if you picture yourself walking into the Starr, at the very rear of the first story was the lecture room. It was 60 feet by 40 feet. The free reading room was on the north side of the main hall. The circulating library was opposite the reading room. The ladies' room is behind the library. We'll talk about that in a little bit. And the reference or standard library was on the second story in a rather large room also. And in the basement, kitchen and dining hall. So if you wanted to take books out of the library, you had to pay a membership fee. It was pretty modest by today's terms. It was 50 cents a year. And if you wanted to use a lecture room for an event or an occasion, you needed to rent it. Now the reading room, which had newspapers and probably journals, magazines, that was there for all people to use, and it was free. So the library terms and regulations, you had to pay your subscription in advance. 1 year, 50 cents. I guess if you wanted to do 6 months, you could pay 25 cents. And you must not lend any books to people that are not subscribers. Or they should not be lent by subscribers to other people. Can't mark the books in any way. You can keep the book for a week and then renewed for another week. And then they list the holidays and days that the library is closed. One thing I want to mention that Beverly found was that 29 years later in 1891, membership was free for all. And when that occurred, the circulation of books skyrocketed. Now the reading hall, they had rules and regulations also. The lower room of the hall is free to all, but subject to the following prohibitions. No profane or improper language or disorderly conduct will be allowed.
I can't go.
No intoxicating liquors of any kind will be allowed. No papers or pamphlets to be taken from the room. The front room of the second story will be used as a circulating library. And that's where you had to pay your 50 cents and you could take out books. The back room, this was the ladies' room, was to be used exclusively for the use of ladies. Those using this room will be required to pay $1 a year, and the subscription being entitled to the use of the books in the library. Strictly enforced rules they had. So the ladies' room was only for the ladies. Beverly shared this lovely book. These books are all in the library now in the Historical Society room. And this is the original circulation ledger for the Institute. And this particular book, it was used from May 22nd, 1861 until January 30th, 1864, until they had to go to a new book. And you'll notice that the date is on the left side. The drawer's name or the person taking the book out is here. The title of the book they took out is here. The number of the book. When the library started, books were numbered. They did not have a system other than numbering them. And then they recorded that the books were returned. I was so interested in the names here. Again, you know, if you know anything about the area, you know the names. I love seeing Benjamin Heavner taking out humorous stories. This was right before Benjamin went in the service and joined the Civil War. So quite a thing to look at. Now this cover does look like it's very destroyed, but it's actually a marbled book and obviously quite old. But this was the alphabetical catalog of all the books that were held in the library, starting with number 1, The Administration of John Adams, 2nd volume. And this is a book stamp that was used in the library to identify their books, stamp them. Again, many of these things are housed in the Historical Society room. This is a picture. Obviously, we can't date it too accurately, but it is a picture of the reading room. And we say that because here are the newspapers. And these look like other newspapers or journals or pamphlets. And these look like reference books in the back. Now, located in the right side in the back is a beautiful clock, a 1797 grandfather clock that was made in Kingston, New York. It was donated to the Starr Institute in 1917 by the Delamater family. And this beautiful clock is still in the Starr Library. Some of the sculptures and busts located on the top shelf you could also find in the library today. I have to see if that picture is there. I'm not sure if it is or it isn't. On February 2nd, in 1916, an article in the Gazette read, "Improvements to make the reading room of the Starr Institute more comfortable and attractive are being made at the expense of Mrs. Vincent Astor. There are to be new library tables and chairs placed in the reading room, and the room will be lighted by attractive table lamps." Again, I can't say for sure that this is the furniture, but I have a feeling those beautiful lamps came from Mrs. Astor. This is another view of the reading room, but it is a little bit later, and we know that because they added books in front of a door, a bookshelf in front of a door. Obviously, they needed more room. And there are new lamps. They look a little more modern, but my question is, where are those Astor lamps? This could be the checkout area in the circulating library, just because there's a desk there and it looks kind of like that. These obviously are library books in the back. And in 1916, it was noted that the Institute was open every day from 9 a.m. to 8 p.m. In 1874, there was a tribute to Mary Starr Miller. Oh, I gotta fix her name. And this is a quote that came from the newspaper article. "Starr Institute expressed most commendably the program to honor the founder of the Institute. Her spacious rooms thrown open and the lecture room decorated in artistic taste with graceful evergreens and flags and brightly lighted, presented a most attractive sight. The platform filled with the trustees, clergy, and friends. The music under the direction of the gifted Mr. Stiles was admirably in keeping with the occasion." It was a huge tribute to Mary, and the town is very thankful for all that she did to create this beautiful building and library. Judge Henry M. Taylor gave the keynote speech to honor Mary. And this is a quote from Judge Taylor's speech. "From every part of the Institute, from library, from the reading room, from the lecture room, have come 1,000 influences to refine and elevate and brighten your lives." So what was Rhinebeck like in the late 1800s? Let's have a few pictures to share. These are beautiful postcards. And the bottom right is a picture, obviously, just showing you what life was like in the 1800s in the village. The village of Rhinebeck grew around a core of businesses that developed at the crossroads of Market and Montgomery, and that has not changed today. Surrounding the crossroads are its residential areas and numerous churches. Beyond the village proper were milling enterprises, agriculture, and small-scale industries. Now, the village center was a bustling place where people shopped, conducted routine business, and gathered or turned to for community connections and entertainment. Now, the Starr Library, a library, as Mary indicated, for the intellectual and moral improvement of residents, quickly became the hub for many community events and activities, in addition to serving as the village library. And these pictures, you can see that people used horses as a major form of transportation. So they didn't travel far to go. They didn't travel from their home very far. They didn't need to go very far for entertainment. The community center really was where they would gather and where they looked to do those things. So the people, the community and the people in the village looked to the Starr Institute for their entertainment in the form of plays, concerts, lectures, fairs. The Starr Institute served as the stage for many of these events. So in addition to being a library, it became a gathering place for other people in the community to use for plays, etc. And in 1894, the board discussed the construction of a new stage with dressing rooms for the improvement of the main hall. Now, one such event that occurred, I thought it was quite interesting, were broom drills. In the 1880s, Ladies' Aid Society provided enjoyable entertainment, broom drills. The sport developed. During that time, teams exhibited precise and synchronized movements using brooms. It was quite fascinating to see that. So for the price of 25 cents, you could come in and watch this routine, and the fan drill was added without extra cost. Now, on February 22nd, 1876, they had a Centennial Tea Party. Now, this was a combination of Washington's birthday, which was the 22nd, 1732, and the adoption of the Declaration of Independence, which was July 4th, 1776, obviously. I thought this was pretty interesting. At the bottom, you can see Centennial Tea Party in Ye Hall, known as Ye Starr Institute in Ye Ancient Village of Rhinebeck Flats. This was in 1898. Now, we're not sure who sponsored it, but it seemed to have been a terrific event. A reception and masquerade at the Starr Institute. Music by Ackert's Full Orchestra. If I remember correctly, back earlier in an earlier slide, I think Ackert was played at one of the events that we mentioned. Let's see, the concerts at 8 p.m. Dancing cost $1. If you didn't want to dance and just wanted to watch, it cost 25 cents. They had a grand march at 9 p.m. It looked like a terrific idea and a terrific event. And you could get turkey supper for 75 cents a couple. This is a bookmark, on the left, a bookmark from the Institute sponsored by the Rhinebeck Savings Bank. In the middle, this was an ad for a play to be performed at the Starr Institute by the Third Lutheran Church in 1906. And on the right is a paper invitation to a Thanksgiving social, Rhinebeck Lodge, IOOF, Independent Order of Odd Fellows. Now, library minutes that Beverly found mentioned that in 1911, summer people enjoy coming to the library. And as many of you know, Dave Miller gave a recent presentation on the numerous guest houses in the area. And I'm sure things like this would have been suggested as events for their patrons to go and see at the Starr. And this was a play given at the Starr Institute Library, subject from the Bible, elegant, instructive, entertaining. 50 cents to all parts of the house. And this is obviously black and white photograph of a men's dinner at the Starr Institute. And if you notice in the back where the flag is, the balcony had been attached there. So this occurred sometime during the maybe mid to early 1900s. It's a very short list of the many, many, many types of events that occurred at the Starr. As you look through this, again, it's a very short list. It doesn't capture everything, but it does indicate that it was a variety of uses for the community. And I love the quote at the bottom. The one building in the village in which the rich, the poor, the good and the bad, the old and the young meet and enjoy life together. And this was a quote from the 1987 Gazette by town historian DeWitt Gurnell. So poor Mary Regina Starr Miller at 74 dies after a long illness. And the Gazette wrote, the sphere in which she was most at home was that of doing good to the needy. She founded the Starr Institute for the use and benefit of the general public of Rhinebeck, where it was still as a fitting monument. It will stand as a fitting monument to her memory. Now, in her will, Mary gave a fund of $100 as $10,000 as an endowment to the Institute. Mary, after her funeral, she was buried with her ancestors in an old burying ground at the Grove. In 1894, she was moved to the Rhinebeck Cemetery. 1907, YMCA joins the Starr. Now, while the Starr continued to operate, the Starr Institute was continuing to operate the library and used the venue for other community events. They also leased a portion of the building to the YMCA. And it's believed that this was most likely a way to generate financial support for the Institute. This is a flyer from the opening of the Starr. It was a 4-day event with activities every day. First day was for men only, but after that, the public was invited. In 1906, when the building was leased to the Y, a 25-foot by 50-foot addition was added to the rear of the building for the construction of a swimming pool. The basement, which originally housed just the dining room and kitchen, was enlarged to add 2 bowling alleys and game rooms. The Starr wrote that they're fortunate to have a first-class gymnasium, well ventilated, finely equipped, modern apparatus. An hour's exercise here, followed by a shower bath and a plunge in the pool, will make one experience the real joy of living. They had bowling alleys with pinboys, and the members of the Y were encouraged to use the reading room to browse through newspapers and magazines. And they boasted the 18-foot by 40-foot pool. The water was heated to 75 degrees, and there were 8 shower baths. And this is a summary of the number of participants in various activities from September 1907 to April 1908. A view of the lobby of the YMCA. Obviously, the gymnasium with all their equipment, apparatus, the gym. And I have a feeling, just looking at this, that this might have been taken from the stage. The swimming pool, the heated swimming pool, and the 8 showers that were included to rinse off. And of course, the bowling alley. I can't quite read what they're not allowed to do, but these 2 signs says you're prohibited from something. This was a picture of the stage and a picture of the boys' Bible class. Now, even though the Y was there, the library was there, they still had community events. This was a show that went on, but notice that was called the YMCA Hall. This is a postcard where they are labeling it the YMCA, Rhinebeck, New York. The building still looks the same. The trees have grown a little bit, but it's still the same beautiful building it was when Mary had it built. In 1914, the YMCA terminated its lease and left all its improvements with the Starr Institute. I found this quite interesting. In 1908, there was an ad in the Gazette, found in reading room of Starr Library, gentleman's umbrella. Well, I thought that was really nice. They're going out of their way to find out who left their umbrella there. In the next sentence, the owner may obtain property by paying for this ad. I can't hear people laughing. So Rhinebeck changes with the times. You can see a difference in transportation that's very obvious, but the bottom postcard is East Market Street, still looks the same as it did in the other picture postcard where the violet wagons were being loaded. The town basically has not changed much in terms of its footprint. So in the mid-1900s, village life changed with the times. More people, businesses, and there were different modes of transportation. But the Starr Institute continued to be a gathering place as well as library. The Institute continued to be used by the community in many ways. They would, town teams of basketball were played there. Girl Scouts and Boy Scouts met there, as well as other community clubs and religious organizations, and the library. But there was, however, a new attraction in Rhinebeck. Movies. Now, a little background on movies. May 1913 Gazette, the Rhinebeck Aerodrome at the corner of West Market and Oak Street will be opened this Friday evening. The proprietor is James Cozine, who has a farm in Milan and a residence in New York. The place will be used for the exhibition of moving pictures. Miss Ruth Slate is to preside at the piano. Now, these were outdoor pictures. Obviously you had to bring a chair or blanket or something and watch the movie on a screen outside. A year later, a little over a year later, in the Gazette, James Cozine, who has operated the Rhinebeck Aerodrome so successfully, has secured the Starr Institute and will show moving pictures there Thursday, Friday, and Saturday evenings, as long as support warrants the outlay. Mr. Cozine has secured a reputation here for high-class pictures and has given Rhinebeck service equal to that in the city theaters. Thursday was the opening night, and the feature was the first series of The Man Who Disappeared by Mark McDermott. This series will be continued. And then further on it says, Mr. Cozine has decided to establish two prices. The first floor will be 10 cents and the balcony 15. And children will be given a matinee each Sunday for 5 cents. Part 2. In the 1920s, the Institute's men's club, the Starr Institute's men's club, began operating movies. They had a single projector and it was hand cranked. A second projector was installed as well as motors. Now, movies then were expected, for whatever reason, I don't know, to last 2 hours. So if the movie was running a little faster than the 2 hours, they had to slow the motor down. So as I indicated here, runners no longer ran, they loped. And also, when they had to change reels, when they had the single projector, they would have the pianist play between the reels during a short intermission to give them the time to change the reels. Now in 1929, they installed amplifying system and movies played along with a phonograph record. In 1930, talkies came to the Starr. And the first talkie at the Starr Marion Davis, The Florodora Girl. I'm sure it was a big hit because not only could you see them in action, but you could hear them talk. Now in 1941, the theater changed quite a bit. This is a picture of the theater interior. Obviously, there are permanent seats in there that were added. And the theater on the outside changed because they added this little piece on the left side of the building. And I would assume this is the booth where you would pay or purchase your tickets for a movie before you would enter to see a movie. And now they've also added a plaque right here to the right of the front door. And that actually says the Starr Institute Library and Reading Room. In 1959, the Starr Institute joined the Mid-Hudson Library System. So that also changed a lot of what was offered inside the building in terms of library services and probably expanded it greatly. This is just an example of, from the newspaper, some of the films that were shown in the 1950s. This is actually two theaters. This was the theaters at the Starr, and this was in Red Hook. But I love the names: Dakota Lil, South Sea Sinner, Chain Lightning. And I'm sure some of us remember some of these movies. In 1972, Upstate Films came to Rhinebeck and they added a second theater in 1999. And this is pretty much how that outside entrance looks today. They've removed that little booth that they had there and just opened it up. So by 1972, the Starr Library realized it could not meet adequately the demands of the community. They needed more space. And in 1975, the Starr Library moved to its new facility on West Market Street. The space in the Starr Institute quickly filled with new commercial activity. So they had to, it was no longer just a library or a library. It was more of a commercial space, movies and other activities. So the building was in transition after the library moved to its new location. And what took its place? Lots of restaurants. We have the Montgomery Street restaurant. It was in the basement of the old Starr Library building. In 1986, Mariko's restaurant must have moved in where the Montgomery Street was. But in 1992, we had the Cantina, which also says it was in the newly expanded dining room in the former Montgomery Street restaurant. And there was another restaurant called the El Camino Real. And I like this article because it mentions our own Michael Frazier up here. And at that time, Michael was the, let's see, what was he? Was something on the board. I have it right here. Michael, if you could talk. Oh, he was the chairman, planning board chairman. Michael Frazier expressed concern that a Mexican restaurant might draw enough people to fill all available parking spaces around the building. So he, I think recently I heard Michael discuss parking spaces around another building. So this must be a passion of Michael's. Anyway, we had several.
I was not a popular guy for giving Donnelly a hard time about that opening.
But you remember this?
I do, yeah.
Oh, good. But lots of restaurants in that space. And actually, a little aside here, our own Beverly Kane remembers going to Montgomery Street restaurant for a girls' night out in 1981 prior to getting married. Now, in addition to restaurants and movie theater, the building was also home to a hospital shop, children's secondhand shop, computer repair shop, real estate office, women's clothing store, to name a few. And I bet some of you in the audience could name other things that were there. Liberty was the most recent restaurant in the building, but Liberty recently moved out. And the first floor of the building is now empty and ready for new occupants. There's a furniture store, 100 Mile, that moved to the upstairs location. So they are housed on the second floor and they are open for business. But the rest of the building is empty and looking for new occupants. And this is a picture from the outside of the Starr today. And I told Beverly I went several times to take this picture, and that Jeep was parked there all the time. So I couldn't get it out of the picture, but I still wanted you to realize that that building has not changed all that much. The balustrade that was across the front here has been removed and was removed a while back. But basically the building is the same. It's a beautiful building. I just love it. I've always wondered about it, and I'm so happy to have found out more of the history. Now, the concept of the Starr Institute began as an experiment, as we mentioned, 163 years ago. And it was a valued library for residents, and as mentioned, a community gathering spot. When the library moved to a larger facility, the Starr was still a social gathering place for dining, shopping, or seeing a movie. But it was the vision, the means, and the generosity of this lovely lady, Mary Starr Miller, that has made it all a permanent landmark in Rhinebeck. It's a place, as she liked to call it, for the intellectual and moral improvement of residents. And I want to thank you and mention, just in closing, I relied on a lot of people and a lot of sources to put this together. The number one being Beverly, who she and I worked together on this, and found out a lot about the town and a lot about the history. And Beverly is working through all of the minutes from the Starr Library, dating back to the very beginning. And I'm sure she's got a lot of stories she could share on that whole subject in another presentation. But so that ends it. So now, Michael, what do? Do I end slideshow?
Stop sharing.
Stop sharing. Where's that? There we go. Okay. So we're back together. Can't hear you, Michael. We can't hear you.
Unmute yourself.
Okay, here I am. I just want to thank Duane for doing a terrific job here. And she did have a co-worker on this to whom she did give credit, Beverly Kane. And Beverly is going to be available now to answer questions, to any comments, and folks should unmute themselves and just go right ahead. Maybe raise your hand so that we don't have 5 people coming in at the same time, and I will recognize you. And who would like to start with the first question or comment? Well, I will make a, Keith, I see your hand up there. You'll need to unmute yourself, however. Can you unmute yourself, Keith? Because we can't hear you.
Okay, there you go.
There we go.
Yep. A question I have, that was a building that was owned by the village at one time, and did they decide to sell it privately, or was it just a foundation, or?
It was never owned by the village. It was always owned by the Institute until the Institute sold it in 1975.
I see.
Yeah, it was always a privately held.
So when they honored her for giving this to Rhinebeck, she didn't give it to Rhinebeck.
They formed a corporation, which, yeah, she didn't give it to the town. No.
No, she didn't. So should we be honoring her then? I'm only kidding. So
One observation, actually, Beverly, do you know who the current owner is of the building? Who's renting?
I don't.
Because I know Cotella Realty was located upstairs there for a good number of years. And I was curious if it's a coincidence or they were just
Well,
renting.
they're just
from somebody
completing
else.
a major renovation to the building, and that's why Liberty had to go, because they were doing plumbing, wiring, renovating the whole place, and the restoring the windows. They wanted to put in new windows, and the planning board asked them to send the windows out because they're very beautiful windows to a window restorer, and they restored the windows and put the original windows back in again. So the building, I think, is totally renovated now, and now they're looking for, new tenants to occupy the building. 100 Mile, the planning board approved a couple of weeks ago to move upstairs to the second floor, but we haven't seen any other businesses ready to move in there, but I'm sure they will be soon.
Other questions or comments? Mr. Ragucci.
Yes, I just want to say, because Donna's on here as well as George, we are going through a long-range plan in the library. And it's interesting because much of our discussion centers around should the library be a community center? And what does that mean for Starr Library to be a community center? Donna is heading our long-range planning process. George is an architectural historian, and we have just terrific debates about what should be included in the library and what we can do going forward. And I don't think George is thinking about a bowling alley or maybe some plays, but we have these terrific debates about what does it mean to be a community center and what services going forward should the library offer the community. And Don has just done a terrific job on this planning process. And we are continuing to look to the future for the library serving the community.
Thank you, Al.
I'll make a comment if I might, and just say, Duane, that was a phenomenal presentation. I enjoyed every minute of it. And I think I love the part about the beginning and that she wanted it to be a gathering space. And I think that's important for us at the Starr Library to pull that through forward and through our plans, because that's really when we did a survey and about 600 people responded with a lot of comments, and what people seem to be looking for today, perhaps partly because of COVID, is using the library as a place to gather, to stay in touch, to see other people, to be together with other people. And I think that really speaks to Mary Miller's legacy. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for those comments, Donna. One of the things that I found very interesting when you showed the book number 1 of every book that was borrowed by anybody was recorded in that book. In fact, the library used to keep a record of who borrowed which book until library cards stopped being used fairly recently. But what I noticed in that ledger page that you showed from the first borrowings is that even though the number of women on that initial board was only 1 out of about 15, almost half the books that were being borrowed by women. I don't know if that holds true in the following pages in the ledger, but it's clear that the library was really serving women, and whether Mary Miller had that in mind when she was in the process of trying to decide whether or not this was something that she wanted to invest in, it certainly had that result.
And we certainly enjoy being a tenant of the Starr Library, Historical Society. The library is very generous to us. And these programs, I'm hoping next September, if everything goes well with these vaccinations, we could get back to live programs, because Zoom is quite wonderful. But I miss you all and seeing you and getting the feedback that, during the talk that you don't normally get. And Zoom has certainly filled in a gap, but the human contact and having cookies and tea afterwards is something which I'm sure everybody misses. And hopefully this plague will end by next September. We can get back to working in the library and giving up programs in the library, as well as many other programs that the library puts on as well. Betsy, turn on your microphone.
You have some kind, you need to unmute yourself.
Oh, can you hear me?
We can hear you now, yes.
Oh, okay. That was phenomenal. Oh, it was so different, so unusual. Have you thought about compiling these wonderful presentations in a booklet or a summary to leave with the bed and breakfast places, with the hotel, for them to realize, or even us old residents, but for newcomers to realize the, importance and the work that has gone into this.
Well, Betsy, this video, which I'll work on tomorrow, will be the 78th video on our website, and they're all available. And in the last 10 years since we started doing this, we've had 32,000 people view the videos.
Wow.
So,
Okay.
they are available.
And do
David,
the bed and breakfast and the hotels, are they aware of all this also?
We advertise it to the, when I post the video tomorrow, I will send it out to all the members and post it on Facebook, post it on a Rhinebeck Past and Present Facebook page, which has over 3,000 people who are interested in Rhinebeck activities. And as I said, 32,000 people have viewed all or part of the videos over the last 10 years.
Yeah.
And we also have been putting them on DVDs, and the library has been loaning them out to people as well. And they also run on Panda, public access television station, available to local people who get channel 23 in Rhinebeck and Red Hook.
Now, on the opposite side, I don't want Rhinebeck to expand too much.
Well, see, I know
mean,
you're only in Rhinebeck half the year now, but we have a relatively new bed and breakfast, actually right across from the Starr Library. And the owner of which, George Baker, is on the screen with us. We're delighted to have him not only as a member of the Historical Society, but I believe he's one of our advertising members. So if we can get more of the beds and breakfasts to advertise with us, that will work well for them and for us.
yeah, you're at the crossroads. Yeah.
But David is right. All those programs, I don't know if I can't do it from where I'm at, but David, are you able to pull up a screenshot that shows where those videos are available? If you go to RhinebeckHistoricalSociety.org, there is a listing of all the videos that David has been talking about. And Duane's will be up there. Duane and Beverly's presentation will be up there within the next week.
Could you send a summary of maybe the last year or 5 years, or?
I can forward you the link for the entirety of those.
Okay. All right.
I think can you go on to YouTube with a smart TV and pick those up as well?
Yep. Yes, you can. If you know what you're searching for, like David Miller, boarding houses of Rhinebeck, you'll find it.
And many times it'll
directly on YouTube versus going, but you can go to our website and you'll see the 77, soon 78 list of them by year. And then you can click on any one of them and watch it.
Okay. Thank you.
Maybe I can send as a chat to everyone it's HTT. I'm trying to type here. So if folks have additional questions while I'm scribbling on my typewriter here. Now, one of the things that, the other thing that I noticed in one of the pictures, Duane, you had, and you didn't know what year it was, but it appears to me it was very early in the days of the library. The picture on the wall was of Lincoln, I believe, with his
I think it is,
cabinet.
right.
So we know it was after his taking office, which was very close to the date that the Starr Library opened. And I wouldn't be surprised if that picture was posted there, probably in the mid 1860s, or soon thereafter, since he was such
I would be,
revered
Beverly,
person
do
in
you
this
know if
area.
that picture's still there in the library?
I don't know.
Yeah, I feel like I've seen it, but I couldn't be for sure.
Well, you mentioned George, so let me talk about George. George's bed and breakfast. One of the things that George told us on the library board was that people stayed at his place and they kept asking about what is that building across the street. And as a result of that, we put up more signage, which George is in charge of, the committee that I know Mike doesn't like the signs, but a number of the residents at George's bed and breakfast kept asking him, what is that building across the street? What is that building across the street? Which kind of told us that we needed to improve the signage and to let people know that the library was there. So, and we continue to do that. We have more plans for that, but don't tell Michael.
I'll put myself on mute right now. Yeah.
I've been reluctant to unmute myself only because the cold weather has reduced my whole family to one room, and I have two rather noisy children in my midst here, and I didn't want a towering stack of dominoes shattered all over the floor to startle everybody.
So George, you're an architectural historian. What do you think about those pictures of the old building? I mean, what was your impression?
I've always noted, because I was aware that the building is lacking its balustrades. That does, to me, make quite a significant impact visually to the main facade of the building, and it's lamentable that they're gone and haven't been reinstated. But otherwise, it being a masonry structure, there really isn't, fortunately, too much they could do to it, save for disfiguring its fenestration. So I think it is very commendable that they have restored the original sashes, which are such an important part of the building's appearance.
Does anybody else have any more questions or comments about the history of the Starr
I
Institute?
have a question.
John?
Yeah. Is there any significance to the different spellings? Starr with one R and Cozine, Coszne.
Oh, is that the same Cozine?
I think that was just a typo.
Oh, and the same with single R on Starr.
Well, no, Starr is always Starr. And Cozine, I think, was just a typo in on the screen there. Cozine.
And now the first floor is available. Does that include the cellar bar? Is that all one unit?
I'm not sure what they've done with the renovations, but when we hear from them and somebody rents it and comes to the planning board, I'll let you know. But now all I know is 100 Miles been approved to move up to the second floor.
I do have a question. What was there some feeling of reticence amongst residents of Rhinebeck at the time that they decided to vacate the building and relocate? Does anyone know how that was received?
You mean in 1972?
Yes.
I think the perception at that time, I mean, it really was a problem with regard to the adequacy of space, with more people, not just adequacy with regard to storage of books for the lending portion of the library and reading portion of the library, but also because more and more clients were using the library. I moved here in 1971. And I remember going into the building, and the circulation desk was, you immediately went in on the right where the Starr Bar most recently was located, and Liberty most recently. There just wasn't the books. They wanted to be able to acquire more books, but they didn't know where they could put them. So I think that was more the issue than anything else. I mean, I wasn't in touch with folks at the library. I don't know if there's there are a number of people here on the screen who've lived here in Rhinebeck longer than I. Betsy, do you recall the discussions at the time? Beverly?
No, I don't, because I was married then and living here in California. So,
Okay.
but my parents were there. Yes.
And Beverly, you've been through the records, and you were living here. What is your
Well,
recollection?
actually, during that period of time, I was in college, so I wasn't living here.
Okay.
But no, I don't really have a good sense of why. I kind of feel on one level it might have been. I think it was a lack of space, like you're saying. But I also think that there might have been some pressure, like we need something new. We need to have a new building, because they were going to build it was actually to be the community center, and with conjunction with the pool. And it was actually called the community center. They changed the name from the Starr Institute to the Rhinebeck Community Center. And so I think that was part of it as well, an interest in sort of expanding what it was used for.
The other person who's on the Zoom call, who certainly is more familiar than probably any of us with what was going on in the village, is Herman Teachin. Herman, I think, is in South Carolina right now, and is on mute. Is there a chance you could unmute and share your comments?
I'm here.
Yes.
No, at the time, it was the time also of the settlement, finally, after 30 years, of the Wells property.
Okay.
And Don Dapson was very much involved in that, as I recall. Well, not the settlement, but Benson Frost, finally, Benson Jr. But also with the need for a community center and a pool and a rec center. So when there was the acquisition, then the property was split up. Part of it was sold to a private group, of which Bob Marvin was a part. And that was eventually acquired by the Thompson Trust and the Mazzarella. I was aware of that. I was on the town board when all that happened, after a long time of getting the funding and things like that. But the library had, there was the need to grow and to offer more services. And it was an ideal location because it was on the edge of the village. And they, besides the sale of the current the old building, of course, there were a lot of private donations. They had a big fundraiser. I don't know, Beverly, you probably see the records in the library of the fundraiser at the time to build a new building. So there was this anticipation of the need to grow and to change, and the down street was becoming not very accessible. Also, I think they didn't want to put a lot of money into the older building again and not see the expansion. There was a lot of talk of, the pool was in disrepair, and that was eventually done away with. I remember that. Yeah, it was a very active community affair, and a lot of money was raised, and it launched a lot of. Mary Frazier was very involved in it, and I know Kay Verrilli was, and Don Dapson. that was, I think, Beverly, you're right on about the reason was the growth in the community and the need for a bigger facility.
Thank you, Herman, for sharing those details from, because that.
One comment, you see we have Herman coming in from the south, we have Betsy coming in from California. The planning board meetings, the zoning board meetings, and the village board meetings have all been on, well, some have been on Zoom, some have been on Facebook. I've spoken with the mayor to try to figure out a way that when this returns to normal, how can we keep having people come in remotely to planning board meetings? And they're working on some kind of technology, with the village technicians and webmasters. And if they can figure out a way to do it, I'll have to work with Al and Steve Cook and see if we could figure out a way that programs that happen live at the Starr Library, hopefully next fall, can somehow also be on some web platform like this. So we could have Betsy, Herman, if people go, like Nancy Kelly usually goes to Florida in the winter, and participating live instead of just watching the tape, being able to make comments as Betsy and Herman have. So hopefully in the next 6 months, we're going to figure something out. And as soon as we do, I will talk with Steve Cook and Al and see if we can figure out some way to get the library live as we're doing now, as well as having it live in person at the library.
Thank you.
Not hard to do, I don't think.
Yeah, I don't think it will be. We'll have to figure out a way to do that. So,
Yeah, sure.
so if anybody doesn't have any more
I
questions.
have one more.
Yep.
The footprint of the pool, is that the same footprint that is now Dee Dee's 2 upstate film theaters?
No, the pool was a parking lot behind the building. That was.
Wow.
Yeah, I remember when they tore that down.
Yeah.
I still remember the old pool, and it wasn't feasible economically in the cost of maintaining it. So they decided to do away with it. And that's when, of course, at the time, that fostered the need for the new town facility. So where the current pool is.
Well, then
the
the-
problem with maintaining a pool was that the state health department requirements for the amount of water that had to be circulated per hour would have required a total rebuilding of the system, and it would have been extremely expensive.
Well, the footprint of the theater, what was that prior?
That's the plan that Duane showed early on in the program. It's essentially, well, I don't know. Duane, do you want to, Duane or Beverly, you want to tackle that?
Where was the theater? I think the theater is still there, right?
Right,
The
right.
theater was where it is.
The theater is where it is. I mean, that's where it always was.
Right.
Well, they did expand it, right? I mean, they did
They added to it, but yeah, but
that, right, to make 2 theaters.
right.
Mhm.
You
I
can tell
remember-
when you're in the theater at Upstate that it looks just like the theater.
It's in
Yeah.
that picture.
And yeah,
I remember in the 40s going to that theater once a week on Saturday afternoon. Yeah, that's where we went. Yeah. Yeah.
One of the
I
reasons,
have a small correction. Or no, it's, I think you want to, I don't know if it should still be corrected or what. Past the quotes from the Gazette, there's just a tiny correction there. Mary Starr, it says Mill, M-I-L-L. I think you want to add E-R.
the
Yep.
reason for that,
I
Betsy,
do.
was that the videos on the extreme right of
Yes,
your screen
they
are
block.
stand in the way of the right-hand part of your, so the ER in Miller would have been underneath that. That's why Duane had mentioned, and I'm usually the one who mentions it, I forgot to do so, is that when you see one of these programs and somebody is presenting a screen, You can hit the minus sign above those little cameos on the right upper right corner of your screen, and then those won't block your view of the entire listing.
Yeah, thank you. Maybe in the beginning, the next meeting, you could remind us.
Once,
It was really only in the beginning that there was a blockage, maybe the first
Okay.
1/4, so.
So we have a large, we're working on a large list of programs for 2021. The first, spring semester from January through May will still be on Zoom, and that'll be going out in our newsletter on February 1st. We have a program on the murals of Dutchess County at the end of January. If people told about that. And I want to thank Duane and Beverly for a wonderful job putting this together for us. I want to wish, give her an applaud. I want to wish everyone a very happy and safe holiday season and happy New Year. And hope that 2021 will be a better year than 2020. Thank you for coming.
Merry Christmas, everybody.
Merry Christmas.
Merry
Happy and
Christmas.
healthy New Year.
good night, everyone.
Good night.
You in May. Thank you.